Moving on, ladies and gentlemen. Even as developing nations weigh the consequences of borrowing heavily from China for major infrastructure projects and an anti-corruption probe in Nepal into a flagship airport at Pokhara, financed and built by Chinese state-owned companies, is underway. Another major aviation tragedy has occurred at the Kathmandu airport after a small plane caught fire after skidding off the runway while taking off. CNN News 18 Group Editor Security Affairs Manoj Kumar Gupta has got us exclusive inputs on how Chinese debt diplomacy trap has left Nepal's aviation in turmoil. Now, this is a CNN News 18 exclusive. Have a look at this. Is the China debt pressure hurting Nepal aviation? Now, as per top sources close to the Nepal Aviation Ministry, China's bid to saddle Nepal into debt is actually ruining Nepal aviation, ruining in quotes. Poor leadership of Nepal aviation is causing disasters. Technical glitches normal at newly built airports, not ready, but Pokhara airport has been made operational under Chinese debt pressure. Earlier the Pokhara crash and today the accident are due to careless attitude of the aviation ministry. This is what's news coming through. Pokhara still not ready but bid to make it popular under Chinese pressure. Flights like the Saurya Airlines are made to divert to Pokhara. Forceful diversion of Saurya Airlines to Pokhara. Attempt to show Pokhara is in good condition. 7 domestic and 4 international flights are operating from Pokhara. Alleged benefits to China turning Nepal into a debt trap. Aviation allegedly pushing one more airport in Nijgarh. Irrational decisions are also causing loss of billions of dollars. So it's a dangerous cycle that we're getting into. Andrew K.P. Leung, China strategist, with us, and Professor Brahma Chalani, strategic affairs expert, with us. Group Captain M.J. Vinod should also be joining us. Brahma Chalani, Andrew K.P. Leung, namaste, good evening, thank you very much. Brahma Chalani ji, what's your take on this? Would you believe that such disasters will happen more if nations succumb to pressure, or would you just subscribe this to a human error or technical fault and tragedies like this happen?
There are two issues here, Anand.
Ji.
First is the political mess in Nepal. The pro-China KP Oli, or the Marxist-Leninist Party, has returned as Nepal's Prime Minister for the 4th time this month. He is now heading the 14th government in Nepal in 16 years. 14 governments in 16 years. So you have political instability and political mess, and now the government is headed by the same oily fox, KP Oli. That's one issue. And the other issue is that China's death trap diplomacy seeks to load developing countries with unsustainable debts so as to extract economic and political concessions. It's also designed to gain greater Chinese influence. And we have seen in the case of Nepal how China uses death trap diplomacy to fund political groups, the communist groups in particular, and also fund politicians and influence media and national discourse. So Nepal has become a very porous country, porous to Chinese influence, to Chinese lobbying, and to Chinese manipulation. In this situation, corruption thrives. In fact, the Chinese death trap diplomacy is oiled through kickbacks. To influence politicians, decision makers, China tends to use its money power. It bribes politicians in weak, vulnerable countries so as to promote its strategic and economic interests. It's really unfortunate that Nepal is succumbing to Chinese pressure and even compromising its aviation safety.
Andrew K.P. Leung?
Well, thank you. Well, first of all, corruption, of course, is a global issue. It's not confined to countries like Nepal. Of course, the corruption in China, there's corruption in India, and corruption in Western countries as well. But I think that the rhetoric about that trap diplomacy reaches height with this poster boy kind of case, the Hambintota port in Sri Lanka. Of course, that was a kind of carrion call for China's Belt and Road. And since then, there is a number of studies by Western think tanks, including one based in London called the Debt Justice. And they look at the indebtedness a number of developing countries. Of course, there are some countries which had already been heavily indebted even before the inception of the China's Belt and Road. And so the Belt and Road, of course, was an added kind of burden to these countries. It's not as if these countries' debt indebtedness problem is entirely caused by China's Belt and Road. But since then, of course, there was a major Belt and Road forum in Beijing, I think in last year. And then they look at the various problems faced by the Belt and Road. Now there is the redirected. The Belt and Road is now making it smaller, cleaner, and involving more stakeholders, and definitely looking at the debt issue of the host countries more carefully. So it's not possible just to link the unfortunate aviation tragedy to debt. They may have something to do with it, but I think it requires a more detailed investigation. But as far as the indebtedness or debt trap rhetoric, it is not as straightforward as some commentators want to make it to be.
Right. Group Captain Vinod.
Good to be back with you, Anand. A couple of things I wanted to, it's a combination of what both the gentlemen has covered. Not many of us are aware, especially our viewers. Here in Nepal, we have the ministry which looks after civil aviation is also looking after culture and tourism, and therefore it is called Ministry of Culture, Tourism and Civil Aviation. Now look at the dichotomy. Civil Aviation Ministry looks at the safety. Tourism Ministry looks at the tourism revenue. Now, Civil Aviation Minister, as Minister himself, and currently Sudan Kirati is sitting there, he can't stamp on something which is going to trouble his own ministry. That's point number one. And in fact, the last crash when I discussed with you the last time, I think Jan of last year, there was no minister at all. In fact, Jeevan Ram Shrestha had handed over the ministry on 26th of December. He was from that CPN Unified Socialist Party. And the Communist Party of Nepal, Maoist, had just taken over, but with no minister for this particular ministry.
Right.
Now comes the next aspect, which is the most important aspect, is the tourism industry is, in my opinion, is driving the civil aviation ministry and not the other way around. Now look at what happened today. Let's focus what happened today, because that is what is center of focus.
Right.
Today you have, what I hear from other sources of mine as well. Today you have an aeroplane which was partially repaired at Kathmandu, because this particular Saurya Airlines headquarters is in Pokhara and not in Kathmandu. Why? Because Pokhara is cheaper to have an headquarters. So they had some kind of a repair, put all the technicians and other people inside this particular aeroplane, and they were taking a partially serviceable aeroplane to Pokhara for a further repair or a full repair. So that is what is the long and short of what went wrong, apart from the fact that probably the engine partially or fully quit after V1, and secondly it entered into a aerodynamic stall, and which you can clearly see. And kudos to the pilot. He tried to somehow install the aeroplane and come out of, but he didn't have enough height to do so. But once again, the entire thing now focuses on the civil aviation safety. If they're watching this, my only submission to them would be to delineate this ministry so that they are not, working against each other. A civil aviation ministry has to be separate, and it needs to look at the aviation safety. And the culture and tourism ministry should be looking at getting more people and earning more revenue, etc.
Well, they've
Over to
clubbed
you.
it, and there are multiple dynamics to this, and one does influence the other, and that is something that everybody understands. And there are multiple layers to this, and that also everybody is in agreement. Gentlemen, I have to keep this short today, but we will converse on it at length very, very soon. I thank you for your time. Thank you very, very much. We're going to take a very short break, ladies and gentlemen. When we come back, it's a special report from Rashtrapati Bhavan, and there is a reason why. President Draupadi Murmu is completing 2 years in office on the 25th of July. Stay with us, something very special coming up.